Hey, everybody. Welcome back to Bulletproof. Today, we have an exciting guest, something I'm pretty excited about. And I actually got exposed to this product by a fellow Bulletproofer named Trey Tippett. Shout out to Trey. With us today, we have Emily Ryba. She is the founder of OS Dental. And Emily, a little story before I let you kind of chime in here. So Trey actually texts me on the side. He's like, hey, have you checked it? Have you seen this product? And I was like, no. He's like, it's next level. And so obviously I had to dig into that, started unpacking it, and then got exposed to you guys at the CareStack event, which I know you're a completely different company, but you're at the CareStack event as a booth, and I was blown away with what I saw. So anyway, welcome to the show. We're going to dig in today about kind of what you created and how it filled the void in the market space of dentistry. So how are you today?
Awesome. Thanks, Peter. I'm good.
Good.
How are you?
I'm good. Good. First off, so you probably looked at dental. I mean, how long have you been in dental for?
I've been in dental for about 15 years.
Okay. And earlier, kind of when we were talking, you said you saw like a void, right? Where all the DSO companies had this advantage of a data warehouse, and the middle market or normies like myself, practice managers, practice owners like myself, we don't have the same access. So what I've had in the past, Emily, is I have a practice management software that then I buy a analytics software, and they talk to each other, right? They're bridged. But then sometimes the analytics software can't talk to my bank account, or my practice management can't talk to my bank account, nor can it then talk to my payroll company or QuickBooks kind of thing. And so it's like a lot of things in dentistry, and people listening to this are shaking their head like, yeah, that's kind of what I have. Like a lot of things in dentistry, it's hyper fragmented, right? And that was actually one of the reasons I moved to CareStack. Was I got so sick of all these affiliate things. I need this software to text, and this to do this, and this to give analytics, and all these things, right? It was hyper fragmented and super frustrating, because whenever there was a break, potentially there's a problem. But also, and I think to where you're going to go here today, is that there's a lot of inaccuracies with this, because it's one data source talking to one data source. And what OS Dental solved was kind of taking all these multiple sources and making sure there's consensus among the data. Is that right?
Yes,
Okay.
absolutely.
Okay. So tell me a little story about, what you maybe discovered when you got into this market. Tell me a story about someone who's like myself, right? Was using an analytics software, was plugging along, but probably saw like, hey, it's saying this, but where the rubber meets the road in my bank account, I don't have that. Do you have any kind of anecdotal stories where someone can relate to this?
Yeah, absolutely. So we have a client that is a multi-specialty group that has a number of offices, and they were providing largely pedo and ortho services to their clients or patients. And when we started, they had no idea what the breakdown of their pedo to ortho revenue was. They were using practice by numbers, and they were using Gauge, and they were really struggling to understand how their production was translating into their collections, for example. Some simple metrics weren't tying between the analytics softwares versus the practice management softwares. And they just didn't have good financial visibility overall. So they were also on QuickBooks. And where the doctor is the CEO in this case. And I think that that's the case for a lot of mid-level groups where the
Yes.
doctor is the manager of the company. And so he was really dialed into clinical, and he could get some information from his practice management softwares. And he could do it when he was in the offices because he wasn't using a cloud-based software, but he couldn't do it outside the offices. And so he was kind of flying blind from a clinical standpoint. And then he just didn't really have any financial visibility at all. And so when we brought in OS Dental, we got rid of the practice by numbers and the Gauge, and we were able to give him complete visibility on his clinics at any given point, whether he was in the office or not, as well as the financial visibility. And when we started to look at where they met, so for example, if your hygiene department is producing X, what does it cost you to get that money? And so when we started looking at that, we were really able to dive into effectiveness of his staff, the breakouts between doctor and hygiene production, and how they were paying, how he was paying them, and what the return on his investment was. Within 3 months of using OS, he actually had decreased his month end close on a financial level by about 45 days. He was in a perpetual close. And so he was able to get down to a 15-day close, meaning he was closing his books 15 days or sooner after the next month for all of his locations. And within 3 months, we were able to increase his hygiene production exponentially through incentive programs because we connected with the payroll data, because we had the clinical data and the financial data, and we saw that there was an issue in that department. And so we were able to increase that production to get to where he wanted to be at about 3 times their wage, where pre-OS he was
Whoa.
doing about 2.
So when you say close, you're meaning that actually, like when we hear kind of close the month, right? He had a 45-day lag. I don't know why that
Yes,
balloon's going off, Emily, in my screen.
yes.
I did this, and I'm afraid to do it again. That's awesome. That's awesome. And
Mm-hmm.
so he was a multi-location with data that just wasn't. He didn't have accurate data. It was really entirely too complex to close his months on time.
Yeah, and he didn't understand how the pieces fit together, right? So he thought hygiene was doing okay because he was just looking at production, but when he saw their salaries in comparison to their revenue all in one spot, he was very easily able to see that he wasn't getting that 3 time return.
So, like you said, when you looked in the market space when you were creating this, right? You're a CPA by background, correct?
Yes, yep.
And there does seem to be a lot of like, so for example, we have, I already told you about all the islands of things, and then I have a bookkeeper, and then I have a CPA, and all this data has to be twisted and turned and contorted into there. And everyone along the way, it's like in dentistry, and I'm gonna give you a little analogy. The more time we take an impression of a tooth, for example, and then we pour it up in stone. If we take an impression of that and then pour that up in stone and take an impression of that, by the time we're done, right, it's highly inaccurate. It resembles nothing of what our prep was, right? So the more time something is churned and turned through data, there's inaccuracies, right, because of a bridge. So you saw an opportunity as a CPA to say, wait a second, all this stuff is kind of fluff, and let's get down to raw data where the rubber meets the road, so that doctors, like you said, the CEOs, can make appropriate decisions on their cash flow.
Yes. And in
Yeah,
a timely manner.
in a
And
timely manner.
And the nice, what really differentiates us from different analytic solutions out there is that we're able to aggregate the data at the rawest level, meaning when we ingest the practice management software data, we're taking it by procedure code and we're able to aggregate things that way rather than provider type. And what that enables us to do is really dive into profitability on procedure code. Or if you have a doctor doing hygiene, you're clearly able to see that. Whereas in another analytic software, instead of being marked as hygiene, it would be marked as doctor's production. And really it's not. It's hygiene production done by a doctor.
One of the fascinating things when we looped you in, right? A lot of times when we change a software, it's like, okay, you're ready to go. But you guys were like, hey, we have to kind of, I'm going to use the wrong CPA term, but we have to kind of curate your data for the next 3
Yeah.
months and true it up and make sense of this. And I was like, oh, wow. Okay. Like that's a real, it's not just, hey, try our software. You're LinkedIn now. And, you're clicked into the database and figure it out from here. It's like you guys really dug into kind of, curate's the only word I can find. But I was kind of blown away by that because obviously that's a very heavy lift on y'all's end,
Yes.
but a
Yes.
necessary one.
Yeah, absolutely. So we spend anywhere between 6 to 8 weeks now integrating groups. And the reason why we do that is a couple things. We're a customized platform to the extent that we will fit it for your specialty. So we do accept all specialties
Oh, wow.
in dental. And so we will tailor specific boards. Like we'll give ortho boards for ortho. We have endo and implant boards. We have all sorts of different applicable boards for different
When you say
specialties.
board, you mean a dashboard?
Dashboards, correct.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so we spend a lot of time doing that. And we spend a lot of time validating the data, making sure that what you're looking at ties to the penny to your practice management software and your financial platform and your payroll platform, because when they don't, it's just so misleading. It's not even worth having. You're better off having no visibility at all.
Yeah, yeah, and it's almost confusing, right, or frustrating
Yes.
because you say when you're being led down potentially inaccurate numbers. Like there's been so many times I'm like, that number doesn't even make sense on my analytics dashboard, right? There's a lot of things that are faulty. So you talked about dashboards, and I will say that we do have, if someone comes to you and says, hey, I want the Bulletproof dashboard, there is our Bulletproof KPIs that Craig and I have determined what we think from a general practice is the biggest indicator, the biggest prognosticators of future success. So Emily and the OS Dental team can hook you up with the Bulletproof dashboard. And I know you guys are going to be at our summit, correct?
Yes.
I think you're going to have a booth there. So if you just, by the way, I'm on your website. So if those of you who are looking at this from a YouTube perspective, you can see kind of the website behind there. It's a pretty slick website. Actually, really, I was thinking in myself when I was reviewing it, I was like, man, I really like this website. I want to maybe emulate some of this in dentistry. Very easy. The thing that's important is that you guys have integrations. Like I said, I am a CareStack user, love CareStack. Big fan of like I said, I got rid of a lot of third-party softwares with that. But you guys integrate with, it looks like, all the big dogs, the Dentrix, the Denticon, the Open Dental, Dentrix Ascend, EagleSoft. So there's everything.
Yeah.
Right.
And we're not limited to those. So we do have, like for ortho, we have Cloud9, Dolphin, a few other ones. And so I think we are up to probably about 130 integrations right now across all different software platforms.
Jeez. Anything else that you could tell someone? Because I think, Emily, a lot of people are stuck in, and I'm not throwing shade on any analytics software, because honestly, I think here's my contention is that anytime someone is engaged enough in their practice that they want to see numbers, right? They have the best intentions. We go to these conventions potentially, and we see, ooh, look at these metrics and data, and look at these 500 metrics that I can do. They have the best intentions of really digging in and wanting to do it. But it doesn't take long potentially for that excitement to wane, and it gets harder. The consistency gets harder over time from what I've witnessed. I witnessed it in myself. And that was honestly the ethos for creating the Bulletproof KPI, because I wanted to find, like, what are the things that if they're all good, I can kind of close my laptop and go back to baseball practice or whatever, you know what I mean? Go back to life. And that's, at the end of the day, you don't want to be so drowned with data that you can't take action, or you get frustrated or intimidated by it. So have you seen instances where there's just data for the sake of being data, but it doesn't do anything?
Yeah. So when I was a VP of accounting and finance at a DSO for 3 years, we had 42 locations, and we started with zero data visibility. And then we got to the point where we had so much data that you almost got analysis paralysis. Yes. It was so overwhelming. It's all in grids and charts, and you don't know what you're looking at, and it's very hard to read. And so we took that, and we really thought about in OS, why do we stop using platforms, or what causes us to not have value over time? And so one of the things that we spent a long time doing was creating workflows within our platform. And so by that, I mean, we focus very heavily on the end user of a dashboard, and we try to give them a couple things that we know day in and day out will be helpful and drive impactful growth in the organization based on their role and their knowledge. And so when you do that, you inherently get more usage out of it because they know what they're looking at. They feel empowered because they can see the needle moving, and they continue to use the tool because they know it's helpful. And so we have a suite of boards for basically everyone in an organization. You have RCM dashboards, we have front desk dashboards, we have practice specific dashboards, we have management specific dashboards, finance specific dashboards. And the purpose of that is because there's very few people in an organization who need all of something, right? They don't need all of a platform. And so if you can develop something that's very targeted to an end user, oftentimes you're going to have a lot more success.
So, yeah, I love that. Like the divide and conquer, right? Like everyone doesn't need to know all the things all the time, because it's just dilution of execution, right? Meaning if I'm in the front if I'm in the front business team, like there's certain things I need to know, like percentage of call answers and right, or conversions and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Like, but if I'm in, I'm trying to say someone else there's just data that's not applicable. And so I love that you have segmentation of that, because that's so good. Like here's the things that I need you focused on, Kristen. Here's the things I need you focused on, Bob. Right. And it's the divide and conquer. And as the CEO, I'll have my customized practice scorecard that you guys do, so that I know, as the chaperone of all of our jobs and this business, I know that I'm a good fiduciary of things, so to speak. Right.
Yes. Yep.
But I love it.
Exactly.
Like I said, I'm not throwing shade on anyone who's using, whenever I see someone using anything analytics, I'm saying like you care pretty deeply about your
Yes.
practice, because you wanted to dig in and at least, fill that CFO role, which sometimes we have to play. You talked about us dentists being the CEO. A lot of times we're the CMO, the CFO, and the COO a lot of times. So we're the entire C-suite.
Yes.
So whenever we can find a product like yours that makes CFOing a lot easier and CEOing a lot easier, it's great for the customization. And I like what you said about creating stickiness with that. So as opposed to being like a one size fits all, here's what you should focus on kind of thing, you have stickiness, or stickiness meaning that someone's going to log in and actually be a long time user because the rubber meets the road, as opposed to like, here's some things we think you should know about. And you're like, okay, but like, is that good? Is that bad? What do I do with this? So I love that. I love that your focus is on retention of attention.
Yes.
Retention of attention.
Yeah. And I think, I think about it a lot with my team. I'm not a micromanager at all, probably to a fault. But what I like to do is set high level goals. So if I were to apply it to dental, right? So if I said at the beginning of the year, what's my overarching goal? My overarching goal as a CEO is I want to grow my top line by 15%. And so then we really dive down and we look at, what do I need to do? What do we need to do? Because the CEO might want to drive it 15% up, but they're likely not going to be the one responsible for it, right? It's going to be everyone else in the office.
Or Emily, what I see is, when someone has a goal, I always say like, okay, I want to grow 15%. What are you going to do differently this year? Well, nothing. I mean, so their inputs equal their outputs. And I commend them for having a goal, but without an action plan, right? Of saying, I want to grow 15%. I love that you're kind of act as the co-pilot in that. And it's like, okay, well, here are your bottlenecks. Here's what you're missing in order to grow 15%. Like, here's the things you need to focus on. Here's the things you need to fix. Here's the things you need to augment in your practice. Like, that gives a prescription for that 15%
Yes.
growth. It's supposed to be like, I'm going to grow 15% this year. No. And I always kind of say, like jokingly, like, no, you're not. Unless there's some macroeconomic climates like interest rates that just make everyone want to spend on dental. No, you're not, because you're not changing a damn thing.
Right. And so what we do is we really focus on what their goals are when they come on board. You can enter your goals into our platform and then you can track towards them. But what we do is we say, okay, let's talk about that. So 15% is your top line growth. So what does that mean for your RCM department or your billing team? What do you need them to do? Okay, you have 3 things that you need them to do. Let's put it in analytics so they can measure their success. What do you need your front desk to do? What do you need your call center to do? What do you need your hygienist to do? And so when you give everyone 1 or 2 tasks that are very attainable, if they have the right information in front of them, 15% all of a sudden is massively attainable as an organization, and it's not a heavy lift on one individual.
See, this is like, this enables true leadership. And where I'm going with that is,
Mm-hmm.
I want to double click on what you just said, right? So like, here's the 1 or 2 tasks that I need you to focus on, versus like, hey, a lot of times we just tell people the outcome of what we want, but we don't tell them how to get there, kind of thing. Like, hey, I just need you to do better, right? Hey, I just need you to, collect more. Hey, I just need whatever it is. And it's the wish and the outcome, but it's not the instructions on how to get there. So I love that, like, you reverse engineer the outcome. You say, here's the 1 or 2 things each department needs to do per se to get there. That's really genius. Honestly, I'm taking some takeaways because I have some holes in my
Thank you.
my operational acumen. So the big DSOs, Craig and I always have this saying, like, that DSOs are playing, unfortunately, an unfair fight in our industry, meaning they get cheaper labs, cheaper supplies, cheaper, blah, 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 blah. And we always say, like, don't bring a knife to a gunfight, and it's a weird metaphor, but it's essentially, what our premise is at Bulletproof is, right, to give everybody a fighting chance in this era of consolidation. It's not us versus them, but we want to level the playing field. So we bring on technology and processes and things like that to help the people like us, right? The single practice owners, multiple practice owners, the non-DSO. And again, not us versus them. Like, there's an unfair advantage and everyone kind of knows it, right? Because of economies of scale. So DSOs have data warehouses, right? Where all the data goes in. And so this was an advantage they have. And that's where you saw, like you said, the middle market opportunity. Can you explain kind of what a data warehouse is just for us normies? And then how you then created a product to level that playing field for us. Someone calls them, the single practice owners.
Yeah, absolutely. So a data warehouse, and admittedly, I'm not very technical at all. I have a wonderful partner who handles all of this for us. But a data warehouse, I like to think about it, and I boil it down very simply because I need to think about it this way. I think about it like a shelf, right? It's a shelf with a bunch of boxes, and every piece of disparate data has a box. So your practice management software has a box, and your QuickBooks financial data has a box, and your call center data has a box. And so you have all of these boxes on this shelf. And what the data warehouse enables you to do is store all of that data in those boxes. And then you can create dashboards on top of that. But you need to be relatively technical. You need to usually have a key employee on staff that has some sort of coding experience, Power BI experience. But when you have that person, what they essentially do is they pull the information from the box that you want and they put it in an easy to view graph or chart or something else. And Power BI is usually what the bigger DSOs are using. And so
aggregated, sorry to interrupt, but you're saying a technical engineer essentially that can pull things into Power BI to aggregate the data of all the things. Is that right?
Exactly. And so when we are at OS, we essentially hold that shelf for you and we do all of the technical work to give you the dashboards that will fit your practice's needs and enable you to grow and run more efficiently.
Love that. All right. That actually makes a lot of sense. Right. And a lot of us do not have the payroll capabilities to have our own on-site engineer for Power BI, which I guess BI stands for business intelligence in this instance.
It does. Yeah. Power BI stands for business intelligence. And the data warehouse, I've seen them, I'm going to say inexpensive, but I just preface this with I think it's expensive. But to build your own data warehouse, I've seen them as inexpensive as $300,000 for initial build and as expensive as over $1 million.
Yeah. So that's a non-starter for a lot of us listening. So yeah. So thank you, Emily, for creating a product for that, that we don't have to go, quote unquote, invest, and if you're to do something like that, you're investing without 100% guarantee of success. I could just tell you on ventures in my own past, not that, but you're not guaranteed a success, right?
Yeah.
So I will say, I want to encourage everyone to check out the website, osdental.io. It's a cool website. I think it'll give a lot of information. You can reach out to Emily and her team. But if you're at all interested, the OS Dental will have a booth at Bulletproof. And honestly, Emily, I spoke at the last CareStack event, but I knew you guys were there. And per my buddy's text to me, I was like, one of my main objectives was, yes, go speak and talk about what I'm doing, but was also to go spend some time at the OS Dental booth, which I did. And I was like, I think I spent way too long there because I nerded out with show me this, show me this, show me this kind of thing. So I would encourage you, I would think it's even worth the price of admission just to see it live. Come to Bulletproof, check it out. And Emily, thank you for spending time with us today. Anything in closing you want to add on anything? I feel like we covered some really good interest. And I want to double click one thing before I just asked you a question and I'm continuing to talk. My apologies. But we do talk about the Bulletproof KPI, right? And a lot of us just want the hack. Like, show me the least friction way. So like I said, I want to double click on the fact that we do have a Bulletproof KPI that you can use with OS Dental if you call up Emily and say, hey, this is what I want to use. But Emily, anything in kind of closing that you want to put a bow on?
I think we covered it all, but I would love to meet some Bulletproof members and talk to you more about OS. So please feel free to check out the website, and we'll see you at the conference.
Cool. Thanks, Emily, for your time.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you.